This episode of the Managing Madrid Podcast is brought to you by Tempo Times Square. This stylish hotel is in Times Square, steps from restaurants, shops, and Broadway theaters. A great option for you when you book your stay in New York for El Clasico this summer at MetLife Stadium in August, or whenever you're in New York. Central Park, Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center, and Grand Central Station are within 1 mile. Their outdoor terrace overlooks the heart of the city, and their restaurant also offers iconic NYC views. Listeners, make sure to book your stay at Tempo Times Square Hotel. When you go to New York for El Clasico this summer, I know a lot of you are going. Book your stay at Tempo Times Square. This episode is also brought to you by the Managing Madrid Podcast World Tour. We have 3 venues, 3 dates lined up right now. Mumbai this weekend, Chicago, July 29th, and New York, August 4th. Book your spot to all 3 of those in the show notes, especially Mumbai, which is happening in a few days. You want to make sure you get your spot booked for that one. Link is in the show notes for all 3 of those. And without further ado, Sam Sharpe and myself, Kiyan Sobhani, are going to break down this England disaster class. Well, let's go.
Nice article in the Managing Madrid blog. Wonderful lads that do a great job there. And worth reading about that man there. Karim Benzema needs to rest, and the numbers reveal why.
Times ended up almost looking like a 6-3-1. Some very good writing about that on the Managing Madrid website. First-rate podcast as well. Of course, Fede Valverde was a huge part of the equation.
All right, England won, Denmark won. We're recording this about 10 minutes after the game concludes. Sam Sharpe, I think England haven't looked good since first half of the first game. It's been pretty downhill from there.
Well, I told you it's not easy. It's not easy following England, and you're only 2 games in.
So what stood out to you? I know you covered this game for Managing Madrid. First thoughts, first impressions.
Yeah. Well, my first thought was it was going to be a really similar game to the first one, especially when I saw that flat back 5 from Denmark. I really thought they were going to camp in. England probably would try and unlock them with a kind of similar fluid playing style. But quickly it actually turned into a very, very different game, far more open, far more spacious. And unfortunately, England just didn't step up to the plate in an even more disappointing way than last time, because at least Serbia took the game to them. This was just the players not clicking in that way that we explained last time we were on the podcast, saying, you know, the best players find it difficult to play with each other sometimes, and it doesn't seem like they're on the same page, and you wonder what they do in training, but they're going to have to build quickly on these 2 performances now. They're probably going to be through on 4 points, but in the knockout stages, if they make a good team, then, as I said last time, it's concerning.
I love it when teams respond immediately after conceding a goal. So many times you see them concede early and they're like, well, that sucked, but we got to stick with our tactics as long as possible. We'll drag it out. We'll defend. But Denmark immediately, now you could argue England regressed and Denmark just was like, okay, well, thank you for sitting back. But I think Denmark also responded well. They played really well. They started to press more. The press on that goal that they scored, which was brilliant. The shot from... forgive me if I don't pronounce it correctly. Hjulmand, yeah. The shot was incredible. But it also came on the back of a really good press on England's throw. And, of course, Harry Kane just gives the ball away. There was a lot of weird giveaways from England.
Yes.
Like, inexplicable.
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, both teams really were giving the ball away and just kind of cheap errors. And, again, it led to the England goal as well, let's not forget, with one of the players so comfortable thinking he had time on the ball, and Kyle Walker just shot in, stole the ball and created the goal. It obviously found nicely to Harry Kane, but it was a weird game in the sense because, as you say, I didn't expect Denmark to push forward after conceding like that. In fact, it came from pretty much nowhere. But I think that's the difference with teams that have trained with more of a game plan, is that, their press was pretty effective at times. Trent in midfield, again, I'm not convinced for the second game in a row, and I hope it doesn't go on going forward. But yeah, it was a strange game and open in ways, but also quite slow paced in others. It's just difficult to kind of derive a game plan for England from all of it.
Normally, you would think a team that has Foden and Jude Bellingham and Saka would love a game in transition, an open game.
Yeah.
But they felt, it looked like they were uncomfortable and unsure of what to do, what the plan is. It felt a little bit too predictable for me.
Yeah,
It felt like
100%.
there wasn't enough movement. Maybe you could have had some more interchangeability, more fluidity, like the way Germany play. You never know where Musiala or Wirtz are going to be. Like they're floating around, they're causing all kinds of problems. England don't really have that. And I just felt like there was never, like, let's say, just random example, Jude has the ball in midfield. If he looks up, there's nothing happening. There's no one moving. There's no one making a run for him. Like Saka, I thought was actually okay at that at times, but there's nothing happening. Like there's nothing. And even their transition attacks were a little bit too predictable for me. It's a shame. And it's not really for me to really care about England or feel sorry for them, but it's a shame that a team that has this much talent just seems so unimaginative and out of ideas and easy to play against.
And again, this is where we can be critical of the senior management. We kind of touched upon the traditionalist kind of methods used by England for 20 odd years now, probably more. Because as you say, Bellingham, Foden, it was Lampard, it was Gerrard 20 years ago, and they just still looked uncomfortable. It's a really good way of describing that because we don't know what it is. But at the same time, I think where the critique should really be placed is the fact that, as you say, there wasn't much going on up front. But then you've got exciting players like Ollie Watkins, who's had a phenomenal season in the Premier League, who came on, who made a run straight away to create a chance. In fact, Jude Bellingham fed him straight away. Like,
that was probably the best pass of the game, was that Bellingham pass to Watkins. Yeah,
absolutely. And you think sometimes the best and the most obvious decisions for a coach is the decision they should take. But unfortunately, it requires some balls in a way. It requires a little bit of gut, and you really have to take a risk because the player might not be as well polished as a Harry Kane. But if they're in form and you can see what they've provided over a season in the Premier League or wherever, then 100% in the third group game, I'm expecting to see changes. I think the first disappointment was before we even walked out because there was no changes. And if you're not happy with the way they played against Serbia, which was 40% good, 60% then surely you'd make one or two changes with the players that he's got on the bench.
So the game was a solid start for England. The game, I think, started off well. And speaking of Bellingham passes, it was his pass to Walker, even though it should have been intercepted and dealt with by the fullback, Victor Christensen. It was Bellingham's pass regardless. Walker does really well to get behind. And I thought actually Walker missed the cutback option to Saka. I thought the play was dead. Because Saka was wide open for the cutback. He just kind of looks him off, and then eventually Harry Kane, the ball comes to him and he scores. It was a solid start, and I thought, you won't believe where my mind went. I was like, oh, I wonder now if England are going to coast through this, then Southgate will rest Bellingham and everyone else in the third game because they're already through. Probably will top the table. But obviously not, that discussion has quickly shifted. They're going to qualify, but top of the group is not guaranteed anymore, obviously.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a strong start. Two strong starts followed by two very underwhelming reactions to going ahead, I thought, in both those games.
And I think you're right. And it comes to game plan. And again, if we had a Netherlands or a Germany or God forbid anyone else in the group stage, I think we'd be looking at this very differently. Because the concern is England fails to step up when it matters and they play bigger teams and better teams. And again, Denmark are a perfectly capable team as well as Serbia, even Slovakia are going to, I think, cause them problems. I see much of the same happening on Tuesday. But yeah, at the moment, England's problems lie within. It's not about who they face. So they have the potential to step up. It's just they need to grind out some sort of game plan. If they're going to press, they need to press together. If they're going to sit back, they need the players and the personnel to do so.
I don't think the pressing looks very cohesive either. Like, just if we're let's take this next chunk of time to talk about Bellingham's performance. He was pretty much invisible in the first half. He didn't do anything. And I thought his pressing, it just felt like he wasn't cutting off passing lanes properly. I don't think England's press as a whole was very good. It felt a little bit too disjointed to me. I thought Bellingham also, in the second half, he got on the ball. And then he had that pass to Watkins, but I don't see. I feel like he is just in this, I don't know what to call it, this mishmash of chaos that doesn't
Yeah.
seem like it's organized.
Yeah, well, welcome to England and being an England supporter. It's again, yeah, you're right. You could try and describe it for hours and you would struggle because you can't really put a fingerprint on it. But you do wonder what they work on in training eventually because you're right, the press was disjointed. I mean, when you have Harry Kane, he's a hard worker at times, but today he just, I don't know if it was conserving energy or whatnot, that in terms of movement and areas of the pitch that he was located in, it was clear that he wasn't going to press and provide to the press. So you're one man down already. Then do you want to disjoint the midfield? It was tough. And again, when Watkins came on, it looked improved, which is why for the third game, I would like to see quite a few changes, especially with the informed players getting a shout. But yeah, you wonder what the game plan actually is and what they work on, because some of them have an idea that, oh, we should be pressing here, whilst others kind of don't do that at all. Some of them are obviously on the same wavelength, and for some reason they do make these petty mistakes when they're not standing in the right areas, or they thought that the player was going to be where they weren't. Yeah, it's just a bit of a mess at the moment, and they don't have the time to fix that if they haven't actually ironed out any kind of game plan.
Well, let's start here. This is a super chat from Anthony Tharp, who says the TAA midfield experiment needs to end ASAP. They have 3 right backs on the field right now.
Yeah, and again, they have so much quality in that position that I guess they're going to try and move it around. But I didn't like it in the first game. Trent has the skill set to play midfield, and Conor Gallagher came on and wasn't the most impressive. But you've got Kobe Manu on the bench. I think it's an easy choice to play him with the way that he was playing for Manchester United throughout last season.
People were asking, like around when the tournament started, can TAA be the Kroos replacement? And I wasn't entirely sure what they meant exactly. I mean, he has progressive passing. Okay, noted.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's what they're referring to, but he's not a midfielder. So my answer to that was like immediately no. But the thing is with TAA is that he has the ability to pick out a pass out of nothing, and he is incredibly gifted. He does not have the defensive IQ to play in that position, and I just don't think he really understands the positioning as well. And the bigger problem is actually not even that. It's that you have players who can play that position naturally, and I think now you can start to kind of talk about what experiments need to be brought in the third game and what experiments need to end. And it's really not ideal, first of all, that you need to experiment in the third game at all, because the best teams right now know who they are. They know what their best 11 is. You look at Germany, it's a well-oiled machine. They know where everyone needs to be. They know what their best 11 is. They know what their scheme is. There's no guessing. With Southgate, I think he just has no idea what he's doing. He may think he knows what he's doing, but it doesn't look very convincing to me. So let's go over the options, Sam. So if we bring up the players, you mentioned Manu. So Cole Palmer has not featured yet, by the way.
Which is, again, baffling. Absolutely crazy, I think. To have not featured at all, I would start him in the third game.
So if we're asking for the TAA experiment to end, you're going to put him at right back. I don't think he can be benched. I think he's the team's best right back. And
I think you're probably right. And this is the headache for an England coach, is that they have so much quality at right back, not even left back at the moment, with Shaw kind of umming and ahhing if he's going to be involved. So you have 3 right backs there that probably need to play. But if I was going to bench one, it would be Trippier at left back, and maybe switch Kyle Walker to left back and try Trent at right back.
Walker is definitely their best defensive fullback. But I think the great thing about TAA is that why he's the best at right back is that his overloads are so devastating and so hard to deal with. If you're an opposing defender, they could really use something like that. Now, granted, they actually scored on the back of a Kyle Walker overload, but I think you get a higher volume and better attacks if you put TAA there. So then the question is, what do you do in midfield? Do you put Jude deeper and then throw in another attacking midfielder ahead to make up for, or do you just keep everyone where they are? And I don't know, you do bring in, I guess you could look at Manu, you could look at Palmer.
Yeah. it's a nicer problem to have there because you have players of quality, but they have those set positions. So it is right. It's a case of probably Jude is the answer to that. If you want to keep him higher up the pitch, then you might be looking at a Manu behind him. And I think that balance with Rice would be really, really good. I don't know if Gareth Southgate would even ponder that because it looks like Gallagher at the moment has priority over him. Or if you do bang Bellingham back into midfield, do you go for Cole Palmer or do you go for an Eze? Does Eze get a start? Do you try and accommodate Watkins somehow? He could be a second striker and be quite effective in that position as well. So it's a bit of a headache. But to be honest, any of those options, I think, is a roll of the dice in a positive, direction. I think staying with the same team, and this is the worrying thing about England, is we could easily be here on Tuesday and say, "Oh, the team's unchanged again. We got a win and a draw." And in past tournaments, it's been exactly like that throughout the whole tournament. So some sort of change is going to have to happen. In the midfield, I would prefer probably the Palmer option and maybe drop Bellingham back just slightly because, again, he accommodates those positions anyway. He does so much defensive work when he's given a free role, which is so unlike many players who would be given such a role. That I think that would work nicely. It'd be a good balance. But even if you want to keep Jude up as a 10, then Manu, again, is, I think, a good option.
What did you think of Foden's performance today?
Better. It was improved, to be fair. And again, it's still not convincing for a player who I genuinely rate as world class, one of the best around in his position. But it was better. And again, he hit the post, I want to say once, but for some reason my head thinks twice. A couple of his dribbles were much better. Again, a little bit slow just to kind of shift the ball here and there. It doesn't look like he gels with Bellingham, which I think is a bit of a problem or will be a problem going into the tournament's kind of knockout stage. But at least there's one progression from the second game, is that Foden, he was more involved and he looks slightly better, but it's still food for thought. I mean, he's still not playing as we know Phil Foden can play.
I thought it was the yin and the yang with him. I thought you could see how talented he is. You could see some of his dribbling sequences. On the other hand, I think there was a bit of selfishness to him. There was one where he should have played Kane through. There was another one where he decided to shoot from distance, and every single England player just put their hands up and looked at him like, "Why did you do this? Why?"
Yeah. The three, the Man City players, they come into the England squad and they play slightly different. I know it's because they don't have 11 Man City players around them, but I was watching Portugal the other day, and Bernardo Silva, he didn't adapt his game as much as I'm seeing Phil Foden adapt his game. So I don't know what it is, if it's arrogance. I don't know, but it's something that probably isn't going to be fixed in a matter of weeks. So you can just hope for those little steps forward with Foden. Hopefully he gels a little bit more with Jude, because it's what England need.
Well, City are a very systems-based team, and everyone there basically is just ingrained and used to playing a certain way and knowing exactly where their other teammates are. And when they come out of that system, they just look different for that reason, I think. I also think City have what's the word? They've roboticized, if that's a real word, the game a little bit. Like they've become. I mean, the most famous cases of this have been Grealish and Haaland, who were completely different players before they joined City, and now they're just
part of a system. Yeah, that's right. And I guess for England, it's just kind of minuscule, just details. But yeah, John Stones especially at times. A player that is so calm to the point where he's played in midfield to be, on the ball as much as possible. At times for England, I thought, wow, you would. I'm not sure you played for Man City during the season, because his decision making and the way he is just, it's so different at times. But at the same time, he's easily the strongest centre half that England have.
I think there's also just a lack of interchangeability between Foden and Jude. The only one who's really, really giving them wing production is Saka.
Yeah.
Foden and Jude are very central, both of them. And I wonder if you stretched it out the field and had more symmetry, could you pick them apart a little bit better? I think Real Madrid works basically when they don't have a right winger because they overload one side, and England don't have that system. They're just getting the ball down the middle and trying to pick something up, but there's nothing to pick out. So I don't know. Maybe more symmetry could help in that situation if they got more wing production. But Foden and Jude seem to want to occupy the same zones, and what ends up happening is Bellingham drops a little bit deeper.
I mean, they're central players first and foremost. So if you're going to try and push Foden out wide to accommodate Jude in the 10, he's going to stay narrow. You're not going to get that from him So again, even in that situation, a Cole Palmer, Jared Bowen has been promising when he's come on. That, like somebody else out there again would provide that symmetry on the other side, because I don't think they would go the Real Madrid route where they could overload it. It's just not something that they've practiced and not something that they could probably execute. So it would have to be symmetry. I agree with you. I think that they should try something else out wide and have these two standard wingers that can offer a lot, because there are options on the bench.
Who was England's best player today, do you think?
This is a tough one again. Jude saved me last week because some of the performances were questionable, and this week even more so. But I thought Jordan Pickford was good last week, and I thought he was good. He had a lot of long range strikes to deal with. The goal, to be honest, I thought was world class. It went posting in, so it was that far wide that he would have had to have a really big spring to save it. If I have to go with an England player, I would go with Pickford.
I was going to go with Mark Guehi.
Oh yeah? Yeah,
I really like
he stepped up. Yeah, he has stepped up, because England have had, as I said last time, this problem with centre halves where this partnership, is it going to be Maguire? Tomorrow never gets a look in. Who is it going to be? And Guehi at the moment should be the starter. He's not the strongest centre half that you could pick, and again, not ideal if you're a Spain or if you're in club football. For Real Madrid, probably wouldn't go for a player like that, but he's done a job for sure.
I just like, he seems to know when to step up to intercept a pass or make a challenge. And the one mistake I thought he made, he recovered really well defensively too. Really well. I was impressed with him.
Yeah.
Here's the good news if you're England. There is some good news. The good news is that defensively you look okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't concede in the first game. In the second game, it was a free goal from distance, and you kept Denmark to under 1 XG. The other piece of good news is that, does it really matter what happens right now? Not really. What matters is what you do in the knockout rounds. And if you play your cards right, maybe this game can be a distant memory and you can rebound. Obviously, the trick is you don't really have time. And as I said earlier, this team looks like it's still experimenting, whereas other teams look like they're established and know what the hell they're doing. And that's going to be tricky to bounce back from. Remember, I told you last game there was a bit of Real Madrid and England's performance in that they had individual moments of brilliance, and then you had to suffer and grind out the win. Didn't feel that as much today. I don't know. They're just not threatening enough in transition for me.
No. And it's not like they haven't got the personnel. So the danger is, as you say, they're experimenting, but why? What have they been doing for months on end before this tournament? Because they're not going to have the time frame required to actually grind out a game plan in days, effectively.
Yeah. Before we move on from England discussion and wrap it up, I wanted to ask you about two former Real Madrid youth team players, Rafa Marin, who is on his way to Napoli, and Alex Jimenez, who is on his way to Milan. And I mean, Jimenez in particular, I haven't really seen play. He barely played for Castilla, and I didn't really watch the younger ranks. So I'm wondering, you're the Castilla guru, so what were your thoughts on those two?
Yeah, for Jimenez, I think it's a good deal for Real Madrid, really good. He didn't really feature for Castilla at all, so nobody's really seen him at senior level. He hasn't featured for AC Milan's first team much. From what I've seen, but he's obviously done well enough with their under-19s and the Real Madrid academy to warrant such a move. So I think it's a good move for all parties. I just hope that money then gets reinvested into the youth system for next year, because €5 million can go a long way with Castilla. With Rafa Marin, there's a lot more. My initial thoughts were disappointing, if anything, because I thought that he would make up a first team space on the roster for next season. But when you actually look at it, I guess Nacho is leaving, but he would still be, 4th, 5th choice. So in terms of playing time, he'd be relying on injuries. He'd be relying on a lot of factors that are not, under his own control. If he goes to Napoli, they've got a buyback clause supposedly of about €30 million. If he goes to Napoli and does really well there, it's a big club and a decent league. He can come back at a later stage when a couple more have moved on, and he'll have a much better chance. So at first, it was disappointment because I really thought he was going to be the next Castilla player to get that first team space. But there's a silver lining to it, and I think it could be beneficial for him to go there.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I mean, it was like 10 million plus you keep the rights. So this was a sound long-term investment, in my opinion, because
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if he's ready enough for Real Madrid based on what I saw from him at Alaves. I need to see more at a higher level. Like in a team that I think circulates the ball more. I want to see him improve on the ball. I think he's pretty good defensively. I like to see him a little bit better with his on-ball ability, his passing, and his progressive passing, which is so important at Real Madrid. I'd like to see him develop more. I think it's an interesting place for him to do that at Napoli, and if he works out, then you can always bring him back. But I wasn't sure if he was 100% ready to be Real Madrid's, Nacho, if you will.
Yeah, and there's a couple of players out there that are on that list. So Mario Gila's already in Serie A and did pretty well with Lazio last year, and he's got a buyback clause. So it may not even be Marin in the future, because Real Madrid, they tend to keep an eye out on all their graduates. And as you say, where Marin lacks, Gila is so good on the ball. In fact, defensively, sometimes he can be caught out. They're kind of opposite players, but there's a nice list of talent there for Real Madrid that have come through the academy that they can call on if they need to in the future.
Awesome. Sam, thank you for covering England for the website, and my condolences on being an England fan. I apologize that happened to you. It's a lottery. Go over and read Sam's article on managingmadrid.com. You also had a big piece on Castilla's transfer window upcoming summer.
Yes. Yeah.
Go and read that.
Yeah, so in that piece, please do. I've done a little bit of scouting myself there, so if any Real Madrid officials want to read that, yeah, please do. But yeah, it'd just be good to see a little bit more investment in the team for next season.
The other thing is, for those of you who are interested in Spain, Italy, I'll be back on YouTube in like a couple hours. Me and Diego are doing a live churro stream during the second half of Spain, Italy, and we have a lot to catch up on because Diego ran away during all of Real Madrid's success in the Champions League, and then signing Mbappe for, 2 days later, he just ran away. So we'll be back on YouTube in about a couple hours or so. And then tomorrow's show, which is, let me look at this schedule. Tomorrow's the 21st, Netherlands, France. That'll be only for members. So if you want access to that discussion, patreon.com/managing Madrid, or hit join underneath this YouTube video. We'll see you on the inside. Sam, thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Thank
Listeners,
you. Pleasure.
Thank you. Take care.